So what we're going to be looking at is the bank. I like to call it the bus because it's just easier when we get into our notes. So what we're going to be looking at is the bank. Do y'all remember who was the guy that came up with the idea of the bank? Alexander Hamilton. Was it loose or was it strict interpretation? Loose. But yes, he did create it, but it had to be rechartered every 20 years, and it had to go before Congress. We know the creation of the bank will cause the creation of political parties. And so we will see it come up every 20 years. You also saw in your study guide that Henry Clay wanted to bring it up as an issue, so it'd be an election issue in 1832. One of our questions on our study guide asked, what was the purpose of the banks, right? All of this right here is number 21. This is the purpose of the bank. So let me go over what is the purpose of the bank. The first thing is that it's going to serve as the federal government's depository. So you know the federal government takes money from y'all, right? It takes it in its taxes. And they're going to take this in and they're going to deposit it in the bank. So yes, it's also the federal government's deposits, but what it does is that it pays the government's expenses. Sometimes the government owes people money. And a lot of times, y'all know your parents probably get refunds, tax refunds. That's the government paying its expenses. Also when it pays it to foreign countries. So this is what this bank will handle. Beyond the function of the federal depository and paying the government's issue stuff, we see that they have private depositors. So a lot of you have a bank account, right? You are a private depositor into that bank. There are people who privately deposit into this Bank of the United States. The other cool thing this bank does is that it issues this banknotes. So what I'm showing here, I don't know if you've ever just observed your dollar. Did you ever notice that it said note? It never says dollar bill on here. We call these dollars, right? But these are notes. And what a note is basically anything that the government says has value is a note. Because this is supposed to note value elsewhere. These dollar bills, these are actually greenbacks, are not created till the Civil War. But most banks at this time, someone ran off with my bill. Most banks at this time created notes. And it would tell you where it's from, what value it has, because you could take this note, because it notes that in the bank there is gold. So you used to be, at this time, take these notes and be like, I would like it in gold. And the bank would give it to you. Today, you can no longer go up to a bank and ask for it in gold. Because our money has value because the government says it has value. But back then, all of these paper bills were backed by what? Gold. And so we're going to see it creates a dependable medium of exchange. All notes are backed in gold and silver. And we're going to see it created a uniform that everybody knew what to expect. They could look at stuff. The other thing that the bank did is that it restrained the state banks. They made them collect a large part of their money that this had to have gold in it. Because if this didn't have gold in it, what would happen to the value of the money? It would go down. And so the bus threatened to make sure that state banks redeemed a large amount of their notes in gold if they did not have this. Yes?
So we're like, our country's in debt, but we make money. So how come we can't just make money?
Because then all of a sudden, and we'll go over this in macro if I'm teaching it next year. I just did this. If you just create money, what happens to the value of that money out there? It goes down, right? And so let's just say, Jaden, you live in a house that it's worth $300,000. But if the government just produces money, what happens to the value of your house? It goes down. Do you want the government to produce more money? Because then everything is worth less. And so this is happening in a lot of African countries where the government, because they do have debt, they print these out so the government can pay its debt. Well, the government's paying its debt, but what happens to the value of everything else in society? It loses value. And so that's why eventually you'll learn this in macroeconomics if I get to teach you next year, hopefully I do. That our government is going to have a restraint on how many dollars there are because it is going to be the most powerful barrier against inflation. We don't want inflation because when we produce more money, let's just say you work right now, right? Our government produces more money and you're only making $7, right? So the price of everything goes up. So does your $7 buy as much as you want? So then you ask for an increase in wages, right? But that increase in wages causes what to happen to price? Them to go up, right? So then you ask for another increase in wages. And then what happens to prices? It goes up. And eventually you'll learn this in macroeconomics. It's called the wage price spiral. And so the more we cause more money to be to produce, what happens to prices? They go up, and then what happens to your wages? They go up, but is it ever enough to compensate? No, and so that's why it's really important that our government just doesn't print out money. Because if it does, will you be very sad? Yes, because then your car loses value. If you have anything in your savings, it loses value. Your home loses value, and we just sit there and cry. Okay? But we'll learn about that next year, because they did that in Russia. They did that in Russia, and that it caused, like, people, they wanted to go buy a loaf of bread, but they had to have a barrel of their rubies to be able to buy that loaf of bread. So you don't want that to happen, because then your money is worthless, and then your items that you possess are worth less. Does that answer it? Okay, and there's all economic concepts, and we will calculate math to that next year in macro, if I get to teach it. Okay. Alright, so, do y'all understand why it's important that we just don't print money? Okay, so, one of your questions was on Nicholas Biddle, and it asked, he is the president of the bus. But it called him something as a hydra of corruption, because who do you think is going to invest in the bus? Is it the rich people or the poor people? And so this is why he was known as a hydra of corruption, is because he was only accountable to the elite investors. And he gets to decide who gets the big loans. So who do you think he's going to give the big loans to, the rich or the poor? The rich. And those interest rates for the rich, are they going to be high or are they going to be low? Low. And so this is why they feel that he is corrupt, because he's only accountable to the elites. And so there will be people who are against him. And so I want us to look at all this opposition, and I want you to tell me what party this is. Is this Whig or is this Democrat? We're going to see these people are the advocates for soft money, owners of state bank. They favored rapid economic expansion, make easy credit, put more money out there. If we put more money out there, what happens to the value of that money? It goes down. And so they don't care that inflation will occur. They just want that money out there. Do y'all want that money to be flowing out there? No, because your real items lose value. Debtors favored more banknotes because it enabled them to pay back their loans. So if there's a lot more money out there, people could pay back their loans. But what has happened to the value of their real items? They have lost value. Last group is the new business class. They felt that the rival banks would not help them, so by having more money out there, they could get more loans. What party do you think this is? Is this a Whig or is this a Democrat? That would want more states' rights, help the common man, the debtor. This is the Democrats, right? Okay, so there's other people who dislike the bank, those that feel that it's a monopoly, such as the common man. We see people dislike Biddle because he's favoring the rich, the privileged class. And people dislike that the bus had federal, not only federal money in it, but foreign money. Jackson, which y'all did the reading over this weekend, right, disliked the bus. He felt it was unconstitutional, despite McAuliffe versus Maryland. But y'all learned in the reading what happened to him out west. He had lost, right? He had lost a lot of money trying to speculate on Western lands, and he nearly went bankrupt, right? So Jackson does not like the bus. Regardless of what the Constitution says, he wants to redistribute that money, that federal funds, to smaller banks. So is he going to keep the bus? No. Let's go to the next slide. Is this helpful now? It's all written out? Okay. It's all written out. It helps your arm. Okay. So y'all should have seen on question 22. Why did Clay introduce the bill to recharter the bus early? He wanted to make it an election issue. Okay, what two parties do we have at this time? We have the Whigs and the Democrats, right? Which party is for the bus. The Whigs, they're for the bus. And then we know our Democrats are against. Which one is located in the north? The Whigs, they're in the north. And our Democrats are in what? South and west. Okay, so it's gonna go through Congress. And Congress, it'll pass in the Senate and it'll pass in the House. Now it goes to Jackson. And Jackson's looking at this and he's like, he hates the bus, right? Bad experiences. But Clay thought that the North was more powerful. They had more people. But does the North have more people? No, so he's like, if Jackson passes the bus, he would alienate his following and he wouldn't win the election. If he passes it, he'll alienate the Whigs and he won't win. So Clay's whole reason of introducing this is to make Jackson look what? Bad, so he doesn't win the, but that backfires. Okay? He will win the election. So the election of 1832 is important because y'all should have seen this on number 24 as we get a third political party, the anti-Masonic. How many of y'all have heard of the Masons before? Okay, these are the Masons. They're against. Okay, they're against Jackson. They're against the bank. So this election is really, despite having that third political party, it's really between Jackson and Clay. The bus is the campaign issue. Jackson won because he will veto the recharter. And so what he takes as his win, he takes this as a mandate from the people to destroy the bus. He will remove the money. And so on October 1st, 1833, he begins to withdraw the government funds from the bus and place these funds in a small banks called pet banks. Pet banks. Did they suck up to the president if they're called pet banks? Yes. But they're going to make some big oops with this money. He placed all of this money in these pet banks. And these are state and private charter banks that had just come after this time period. And we're going to see they're going to use the government's money and they're going to spend it on speculative buying of Western lands. Okay. Do y'all remember what it means to speculate? To gamble. So could they win or could they lose? Both, right? So are they going to really win? No, they lost the government's money. Oops. The next thing, these pet banks are going to give loans to the states for internal improvements. Will the states be able to pay back that money? No, they lost the government's money. Okay, was this a good investment? Now they've lost the government's money, and when the government tries to come back and get its money, is the money there? So, we're seeing that Jackson has taken the money out of the bus, and he has put it where? Pet banks. Did the pet banks, were they wise with that money? Right? Well, Nicholas Biddle is faced with another problem. We see this on 27. Nicholas Biddle is faced with a problem that what has he lost in his bank? His money. So what he's going to do is that he's going to call in loans. He's going to call in loans because his bank does not have what? Money. He needs to call in these loans to people he has lent to. Who did he lend to? Did he lend to the rich or did he lend to the poor? The rich. So he's going to call a lot of these rich businessmen up. He's going to call Austin Reed. He's like, Austin, I know you had your textile mill and you took out a loan, but I need you to pay that $100,000 today. Austin's like, oh my gosh, can I pay this today? No, so he's going to have to sell some of his stuff, right? To pay back that loan. Is Austin happy? No, because he put more of his shirts out there, so what happened to the value of the shirts? They went down, right? Not only have we lost money, but now businesses are offloading their produce, their products, right? And what's happening to the value of them? They're going down. So the U.S. government is going to do some other things. You remember I talked about the pet banks spending their money? Loans being called in? Well, the national government wants to use its surplus, paid off the national debt. They want to pay off the national debt. So what's gonna happen to the money? Is the money supply gonna increase or decrease? The money supply what? Okay. So is the economy looking good or is it looking bad? We're gonna see Congress then pass a bill to pay surplus funds to the states. And they will make roads and canals. Oh, they're gonna spend the money. So what's gonna happen to the money supply? The money supply is gonna increase or decrease? It's gonna decrease. And lastly, the federal government is gonna withdraw the money for the pet banks. When it goes to the pet banks, they're like, hello, we want our money. What have the pet banks done with the money? They spent it. So is there any money here? Do y'all see how slowly what's happening to the money supply? It is going down, right? Okay, so on question 32 of your study guide, it said list the causes of the panic. Here's a huge list, okay? And it just keeps on going. This is all of 32, okay? So let me list this stuff out. We're gonna see Congress will then pass the Specie Circular Act, which was one of your questions on your study guide. We're gonna see that this Specie Circular required that people pay, this was number 29, that people pay hard money to buy public land. So people are gonna pay that, but what happens to the money supply now? It goes down. We're gonna see there's economic problems in Europe and some British banks are failing and they're gonna call in their investment as in America. They call up those banks, they say, hey, we need our loan back. So the New York banker has to call in his loans, get people to pay. And so the cotton broker is gonna call the cotton farmer saying, hey, I need your money now. He sells all his cotton, but now what has happened to the price of the cotton? It's gone down. And we're gonna see that it causes lower prices. We're gonna see the supply of gold, which we've been talking about, has been dwindling, right? So what's happening to our economy? Is it going up or is it going down? We're also gonna see that Martin Van Buren's like, oh my gosh, this is not good. So he creates the independent treasury bill that comes from the divorce scheme, okay? Which this is number 33. He's gonna separate the private banking and the American government's banking. And what he's gonna do is he's gonna collect the government money in gold and silver and put them in vaults like Fort Knox. Have you heard of Fort Knox?
Yes.
Fort Knox was one of the biggest depositories of American gold bills. All the gold bar bills, y'all know those? Not bar bills, but just the bars, okay? So now, is that money in the banking system, those gold bars? So what can't the banks produce? So what happens to our money supply? So is our economy looking good? And so what will happen is the Panic of 1837 will hit. Banks will collapse because they don't have what in their bank? Gold to be able to make what? Money. The prices will fall because all of these businessmen are selling off their stuff. Factories will close and we will have unemployment. All from Jackson moving the money out of the bank. Does he hurt people from his own party? Yes, because they're the people who are losing it. So the effects of this is the government funds cannot be used to make paper money. And this will lead to the rise of a specific party called the Whig Party. You should have seen this in question 30, talking about them, that there were the people of the American Revolution that would oppose the monarchy. And these are people who are opposing Jackson. And so there's certain beliefs of this Whig Party that you should have seen in 30. They're anti-Jackson. Because what did Jackson do to the bank? He killed it. Do you think they felt that they should kill the bank? No, they loved the bus. They loved the tariff. They were pro-internal improvements. So where are they? North, south, or west? These are northerners. They're manufacturers. So, by killing the bus, did Jackson make the economy good or bad? Bad. Did it hit or hurt his own people? And so, what are we lacking in our money supply now? We are lacking what? What are we lacking? Money specific. We can't make this money without having what? Gold. And this is going to relate to our Native Americans, which we're going to get to in a second. Our Native American tribes, they have title to their land. But what do you think is going to be found on their land? Gold. Does our government want that gold off their land?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do to the Native Americans? We're going to move them so we could get their what?
Gold.
And that gold could go into the
Bank.
banks so the banks can make what?
Money.
And this is how these two things relate to. Okay? I'm going to pause it right here because we're going to come back and